I think if you're not the same, or you don't feel like you fit in with what everybody around you is thinking, it can be quite damaging on your mental health. It can put you in a very dark place because you just don't.
That was a major understatement. It's very, very damaging for their mental health, and a lot of young people hide it for such a long time.
I'm very, very excited because I am joined by Helen, who's part of the Space Youth Project. Hi, Helen.
Hello, Kaylee. Nice to speak to you.
You too. I'm very excited that we could come together today with the magic of technology to do this.
Yeah, it's good.
So for those people who don't know what the Space Youth Project is, can you just expand upon kind of what it is and what you do?
Yes, it's a project that's been going for nearly 20 years now, and we support young lesbian, gay, bi, trans young people and anybody questioning their gender identity or sexuality. We work with young people up to the age of 25, but we don't have a lower age limit because we understand that some young people might need a little bit of support even when they're like 8 or something like that.
25 and unders. Why was that a key age group for you guys?
I'm a youth worker, so I've always worked with young people, and the normal cut-off point for youth work is 18. And when I started doing this job many moons ago, I didn't have grey hair, and we were finding that a lot of young people were coming to us and they might be maybe 16 or something. And then it felt really wrong to say, oh, I'm really sorry you've hit 18 and so you can no longer come to our project, because they were then just at the point where they really needed to have that extra bit of support, or they needed their friendship groups so that they could transition into adulthood happily. So we decided that we would make it a little bit older than the generic youth work age range, so that we didn't chuck people out and they felt still included and could still come. We haven't, like I said, we haven't got the lower age range, especially now because there's a lot of transgender young people coming through, and we also support the parents so that they can help their child explore whether they're non-binary, whether they're trans, whether, you know, what the, and talk about the whole process instead of feeling really fearful and isolated because there aren't a lot of people out there to talk.
That's really, really interesting. I think I really liked what you mentioned about the fact that you kind of extended it to 25, because I think when you're 18, when you're sort of, especially when you're going off to uni or colleges or trying to figure out what you want to do, you're already in a transitionary state. You're sort of moving through, and so to lose something that might be a support or a stable part of what you've got could be quite damaging. And I know for a lot of people that I know, you know, 18 to 25 is actually quite a big period. You're getting out there, you're experiencing things, and so I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, and it works. But what we do is we try and encourage them when they get to be a little bit older to give back to the project as well. So it's a peer-led project, which means that the young people try and organise the programme, so to speak. So if there are specific things that they want to learn about, they need to talk to their youth worker, and they either plan it themselves or the youth worker helps and facilitates that process. So as they get older, they have even more time and energy to give back to the project. So they kind of do volunteering, really. And we have a group called Supernovas, who are for older people that go off and do organise events like prides or big Christmas parties or things like that. So we help them develop those skills as well, and that's invaluable.
Yeah, that's great, because it means that they can come back and give back to the community that helped them in a way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that you mentioned was that you don't just do things for the youth, but you have tools to help enable the parents. And I saw on your website as well that you do things for schools and colleges, professional spaces, things like that. Could you expand a little bit upon why you do that and why you kind of help to focus on the wider sense in that as well?
Because the young people that we were working with identified that there was a need. So they were going to schools that weren't very inclusive. Their parents might not be very understanding. Their mental health workers or their GPs or even their dentists, other professionals weren't being as kind as they ought to have been, or as aware. A lot of the time it's through ignorance that people aren't always as nice and inclusive as they should be. So the young people said, please can you come to our school, or please can you talk to X, Y, or Z. And so it is because the young people identified that there was a need, so we filled that need.
That's great. I think, yeah, and I like how that sparked from something that the youth saw a need in. It wasn't just that, you guys decided to do it. There was something, and it sounds like the space is very youth driven. They get a say in how everything happens.
Yeah. That we have them feeding into the board. We've had young people that have been trustees. It's not a one-way street at all. We really do listen to what the young people want. I mean, sometimes it is like pulling teeth to tease out what they really want. I'm not saying it's an easy journey. It's actually much harder to do it that way than us to dictate what we think. We've heard little smatterings of unsafe sex or dodgy drinking or something, and then do a piece of work around that. It would be very easy for us to do that because they do talk to us and we know what's going on. But we try not to. We try to make it so that they feel that they're very, very included. It's their group, and it is their group. Yeah.
And one thing that I got from your website was the emphasis on it being a community. That you're building, it's not just a space, but it's the whole kind of community feel that brings to the youth. Why is it important for them to feel part of a community?
Because they don't fit in other places most times. The reason why Space started is because in a generic youth club, when there were some, they always, people would say, oh, have you got a girlfriend? Have you got a boyfriend? And it was very heterosexual orientated. And they would then have to either lie or out themselves or just feel incredibly uncomfortable. So that's why Space started, so that they could be themselves without having to overcome loads of barriers.
I think that's a big part of it, because I think if you're not the same, or you don't feel like you fit in with what everybody around you is thinking, it can be quite damaging on your mental health. It can put you in a very dark place because you just don't.
That was a major understatement. It's very, very damaging for their mental health, and a lot of young people hide it for such a long time that it kind of becomes ingrained, and there's a lot to unpick and unravel, and a lot of unhappiness to iron out to get them to be happy again. It's hugely damaging to live a lie, and we see that with adults as well. And so that's why we try and encourage people to be inclusive and to talk about it and be happy and smile.
Yeah. And that's where the community side of it comes in, because then they find a group where they can be open and they can explore an area which they can just feel like a whole part of themselves, rather than just segregating off.
Absolutely, that it was about community, wasn't it? So they kind of get their own little community within the groups, but then they expand that into the wider community as well, to try and encourage the wider community to be included, like Weymouth Pride evolving and things like that. It's really positive, and I mean there are some brilliantly supportive people in Weymouth and Portland, so it's really fab. But that's taken time. It has taken time.
I mean, when did the Space start? Was
2001.
2001. Wow. That's amazing.
And it started because young people wanted somewhere for them to be, so where they could be themselves. So it wasn't just somebody saying, oh, we need to start a youth group for LGBT people. It was because the young people identified that they weren't being included in some things and they weren't being listened to. So they said, please, can we have a group for us? And there was a bunch of girls that went to one organisation, and there was a bunch of lads that went to another organisation. And a fabulous thing called communication happened, and they all got together and it started. So yeah, they created the name, and it's been Space ever since. So yeah.
Oh, wow. I love that.
And
I love
so
that it was built off of this need that was there and,
yeah,
and came
yeah,
together.
and everything is based around need, not the young people's needs, not just because we think it'll be a good idea or a nice fluffy thing to do, is because it's necessary.
Yeah. And I noticed that you guys have grown over the years because you've got a number of spaces, a number of areas throughout Dorset. There's Bournemouth, Weymouth, is there Dorchester?
Dorchester, Poole, Sherborne, and Bedminster.
That
Yeah,
was a new one, right?
that's quite new. It's only actually had one real life meeting, no, maybe two, and then all this happened. So yeah, so they're now virtual. But we've also merged them a little bit with them being virtual, so that people can actually join lots of different ones. It doesn't really matter which one they join. And we also have a group specifically for T people as well, so for trans or non-binary people, because obviously their needs are a little bit different from lesbian, gay or bi young people. So there's a specific group for them as well, which is working really, really well. So they can talk about their transition, if they're going to have any interventions or not, because lots don't, and you know, that's fine. So it's a specific group for them, and that evolved as well. So we started originally in Bournemouth, and then as we spread the word, there was a need for groups to pop up in different places. And we'll also, we do a lot of work, like you say, in schools. And there are some schools that now run LGBT groups within their schools.
Really?
So that's really helpful too. Yeah, so there are some pants schools and there are some fabulously brilliant schools and everything in between. But yeah, that's a really, really nice thing that is also evolved. There are schools now that have an LGBT element within them, which is lovely for those in especially rural Dorset, because you can't always get to a group.
Could you expand
Especially
a
if they're
little
not
bit?
getting parents.
Oh,
Sorry.
could you expand a little bit on what happens within the group? What types
Whatever the young people, yeah, whatever the young people kind of want to happen. So they create a program it's normally every 3 months. It's been a bit sporadic with virtual groups. So in the other real world, they would organise a program 3 monthly. So they would all sit round, have a chat, and the youth workers would facilitate them into thinking about what they would like to do, whether it be art or cooking or just chatting, playing games. I say just chatting, and I shouldn't say just, because that's the key element of it all. And then they develop the program, and it will always change. It will never actually, they don't always stick to the program, and that's okay. That's youth work. That's what the young people want. That's what the youth workers are ready for. So it depends on what the young people want and the skills of the team. So yeah, it is about what they want to do, really.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially that it's just really geared about how they want to develop it and what they want to do. So how has that merged or changed now with the situation we're with now with COVID-19? How are they still being able to engage as a group even though we can't meet together?
All those things are still happening now, interestingly enough. Last week, one of the groups all cooked together. If they could get into a kitchen, they all cooked the same thing together. So that's was different. And other times one of the youth workers will show the other young people how to cook something, and then they talk about it. And so we're looking at healthy eating, we're looking at health and safety, at food hygiene, cooking on a budget. All of those things have been happening. And then normally when that would be happening in a group setting, in a physical group setting, everybody would eat and share together. That can still happen. They can still eat and share and chat and be here like this. And so we are adapting. I think it's been quite difficult for some of the youth workers, as it's a very different style of working. You have to it's quite exhausting. So you don't just open up the building and then you have a whole team of volunteers. Volunteers have been fab as well. You have a whole team of volunteers and you delegate different jobs to different people. It's not quite worked like that virtually, but it's still working, and we're still doing it, and we're still here for them, and that's the key thing.
Yeah, I love how, you know, it's just finding ways to kind of bring what you were doing into a virtual space and keep that community, keep that, just keep it going so that they still have that support there.
And in the group settings, the physical group settings, we used to do one-to-ones with young people as well. And with Zoom and things, we are now still able to do that, because you can go into a breakout room with a worker, and so that is slowly starting to happen as well. But not every young person is coming to a virtual group that did attend a physical meeting, sadly. So we're also trying to pick up those ones that are kind of falling through the gaps with phone calls or using Instagram or Messenger or anything we possibly can. So our youth workers are working really hard to touch base with everybody. Not every young person has a computer that they can do this on. Not every young person has a physical space in their home that is safe, with nobody poking their head around the corner, or you know, if they're not out at home, it's really challenging. So we're trying to be creative in ways to keep in touch with those ones as well. And some people don't have data or stuff like that. Our team didn't have computers, but we got some funding to get computers for the team, because we didn't need computers. We had computers in the venues, or people used their old home ones or something, and they weren't always good enough to do this sort of stuff. They didn't have cameras or microphones. So yeah, it's been a learning curve like that.
Well, I'm glad it's kind of working out. We're finding a way forward with it.
Yes, we are very creative.
I love it. That's great. How did you get involved in the project?
I saw an advert and somebody said that would be a brilliant job for you, and I thought, hey, do you know what, I think you might be right. Yeah. And it was only part-time then. I was just finishing my youth work degree, and no, I wasn't finishing it. I was still in the middle of it, and I needed to earn a bit more money as well. So I had three part-time jobs, and then this one expanded, and I managed to get more funding, so it became full-time, and then we got more workers, and so it's just grown and grown and grown, and we've been really, really privileged and lucky to be able to secure funding to keep it going, because a lot of places have disappeared now, we haven't, so I feel very privileged at that.
Yeah, keep it going. That's
And my dream is to retire, because we don't need it.
Oh, interesting.
So we need to get a bit of a rig along, because I don't want to be retiring when I'm 107.
There was a quote on your website that I thought was really insightful to the group as a whole, and how although it's focused on LGBT youth, it deals with a lot of wider issues as well that they might be dealing with. The quote mentioned that it helps youth deal with things like depression, anxiety, self-harm, drug and alcohol issues, and a lot of other things. Could you expand a little bit on how that happens, or you know, how it helps them with so many other aspects of their lives?
Yeah, it's informal education. So the young people choose to come to us, and they then start exploring what's going on in their lives. And all of those things happen in lots of young people's lives. But sadly, LGBT people, it happens to more frequently, more often, and probably more harshly. So statistically, LGBT young people are a lot more susceptible to all of those things that you mentioned. It is informal, so we start discussing those things while we're baking, while we're doing an art project, while we're doing, I don't know, even just traveling to an event or something on the minibus. And when it's spoken about, we can normally home in on somebody that is having a major impact on, and then we'll gently, away from the group usually, say, obviously we spotted or heard or we think, what are you feeling, what would you like to do about it? And because you actually ask the right questions, you can get the right information back, and then you can support the young people to tackle the issue that is most affecting them. And the one-to-ones are really good at that. We identify the most important thing the young person wants to sort out first, and then build on that. So baby steps. You have to have the good relationship with the youth workers and with the young people for them to even open up in the first place. That's why it's so sad that so many youth centres have gone by the wayside, because those relationships were there with the youth workers, so it meant that you could find out when things weren't right. So it's very informally, but then becomes a bit more structured, so that you and then aims are looked at, and the young people say, right, by next week I would like to have talked to my dad about him being really homophobic, or whatever it is, or in a month's time I will have gone to the GP and said my mental health really needs some assistance and got a referral to CAMS, or whatever it is. The informal conversations and the friendships and the positive relationships then expand, and we can challenge the tricky bits.
It's sort of creating that safe space where they feel comfortable, that they can open up about things that maybe they don't feel they can talk about anywhere else, and sort of building upon that.
Yeah.
What would you say to a youth who was questioning during this time? What can they do so that they don't feel alone and they don't feel like they're doing this on their own?
Please get in touch with us. Just get in touch anyway, even if it's an email first, because you don't feel confident to do a Zoom meeting, if you don't feel confident to phone, text, just get in touch and start talking to people. It does make you feel better. It might be a very, very scary thing to do, but we're not horrid, really. We're lovely, and we're very welcoming. The other young people are very welcoming. If they want to join a Zoom meeting, they don't even have to have their video on or their microphone on. They can just join using the chat thing. And that has happened during lockdown. There have new people have come on board, and they've just kind of been there on the chat, and the youth worker's been chatting to them, and then the next week they might say something, and then the next week they might turn their video on. I mean, it's not as quick as that, but it has happened. We have had brand new members join us and feel confident in the end to be on video and on microphone and talk properly and honestly about how they're feeling, and the other young people then really, really support them. And that's a key thing as well. Other people have been where that young person is now, and they can help each other brilliantly.
Yeah, and I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would almost stress that you don't have to be at any certain level. Like, you can, if you've got any questions, just that's where you can start from.
And no question is stupid. It doesn't matter. You know, we won't laugh. We are there to help. We will have a laugh, but not at your expense. Normally at mine, and that's fine. I don't mind. But we are there, and there are no stupid questions. And it just needs to be, take that first step. Take it, because it's worth it.
So how can they do that? Where can they get in touch with you if they need to?
They can find us on Facebook. They can find us on Instagram. They can find us on Twitter. We have a website. You can email us. There's a contact form on the website. My phone number is all over the place, so they can just phone me or they can text me. They can send me a carrier pigeon. They could make a paper aeroplane. Anything. I don't know. I'm anything.
Fantastic. And if it's on social media or a website, it's all under Space Youth Project?
All under Space Youth Project. There's all the links on the website, so they're all there.
And that is.
And if anybody wants to volunteer, they can get in touch with us. If they are really good at social media stuff, then we know that we can never have too much social media out there, so that's really important. And also like in schools and things, if there's a lovely teacher that thinks, actually, yes, I should have a poster up, or I should be saying something, then you know, anybody can help in a tiny way.
So even if you're an organisation or a school or something, you can get in touch and see how you can support youth that you work with.
Yeah. So like banners on there, if they're doing virtual classrooms, they could have just a little LGBT banner, or I don't know. You just have to be a little bit creative, don't you?
Yeah. And that's so if they do want to go to the website, it's spaceyouthproject.co.uk.
Correct.
Yeah.
And do you want my number?
If you're happy to give it out.
I'm happy to give it out. Yes.
Go for it.
My number is 07973 405 280.
That's great.
And I can email me, Helen at spaceyouthproject.co.uk.
There you go. So there's so many ways that you can get involved. If you've got any questions, or if you're even just, you know, beginning to explore something and you just want to talk to someone, you can get in touch with Helen or go to spaceyouthproject.co.uk and find out a little bit more information and talk to someone.
Yes, very important. Take the first step. It will be worth it.
Lovely. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
No problem. Thank you. Thanks for having me.